Hello, I'm Claire Davis and I'm here for Mental Health Chats. And today I've got a fantastic speaker who is Ben Lovatt. And Ben Lovatt is going to be speaking about safeguarding and schools for our youth and our teens. So hello, Ben.
Hi Claire, you okay?
Yeah, I'm well. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
That's good. Thank you so much for being with us today. So Ben Lovatt does evidence-based training for safeguarding in schools. So he knows a lot about the teens and the youth. And with everything that's going on with COVID-19 at the moment, you know, we're all very, very concerned about our teens and our youth and going back to school, what's going on with schools. So Ben, would you like to give us some insights of, you know, the communication that you've had within schools about, you know, sending our kids back to school at these very unsettling times?
Yeah, no problem. I think maybe the concerns that parents have, the concerns that children and young people have, and the concerns that teachers have might not always be the same concern, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
So
yeah,
where
so
do
I
you want to
guess
start? Would you like to start with
with
parents or?
children and young people, I guess the first thing to maybe recognise is that their experiences of school are not across the board and the same and universal. So some young people like school more than others. Some young people are safer in school than other young people. And I think kind of what we have seen over the past couple of months is that children and young people have spent considerably more time at home through this period of lockdown than they ever have before. And again, if school's not a good place and home is, then that's great. But if home's not a good place and school is, then you've got a really sort of different experience. And I think schools have probably got to think about how they manage that when children and young people return to school.
Definitely. And I'm thinking about my children. So my 12-year-old's loving being at home and enjoying it so much more, whereas my 10-year-old, luckily he's in year 6 and couldn't wait to get back to school when they announced it. So it's where they're happiest, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, it completely depends on the child. I mean, you know, as you said at the start, we do a lot of safeguarding training with schools, multi-academy trusts, various federations of schools, and I think kind of you've kind of got this idea of children are at risk or children are safe, and if school is an unsafe place, if you've got a child, let's say, that experiences bullying in school and they've been bullied for long periods of time, they don't have a good kind of friendship group or network in schools, they might even have unsupportive teachers and professionals in school that are permissive of that bullying, then bringing that child back to school is going to be significantly more of an ordeal than your 10-year-old, for example, because you're asking this child to return to an unsafe place where they've experienced previous harm and abuse at the height of a global pandemic. So again, this idea of how we support children and young people through that process is really, really important.
Yeah. So what would you suggest to parents and carers who are watching or listening to this of how can we support our young people with all of these changes that are going on in the world at the moment?
I think the first thing is to listen to your child or your young person. It might not always feel like it, but we aren't the experts in their lives. I think they are. They live them every day, and they understand their life better than we do. And I think there's also a reality that, yeah, we've all been teenagers, but we've all been teenagers in very different periods of time. When I was a teenager, it was channels 1 to 5, and you went and knocked on your mate's door to see if he was coming out. Teenager now is very different. You know, you've got a social network of over 500, 600, 700 friends sometimes at the kind of click of a button away. And I think children and young people's lives have kind of become smaller with bigger networks at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So listening. So what if a child doesn't want to speak? What if a young person or a teenage child doesn't want to speak? So how do we get them to open up?
I think there'll be a good reason for that, and I think it kind of starts with I believe that everyone will engage with someone. And I think any kind of resistance to speaking or opening up or sharing or disengagement, I think, is a child's way of communicating what you're doing isn't working. And if you want me to engage, and if you want to sort of me to talk to you, then you're going to have to think of another way around this. So I would always say the onus is on you as a parent or you as a professional to engage with the child. I don't think we've got a divine right for them to engage with us. But equally, again, I think it's tempering our expectations as well, because if a child's not able to kind of tell us what they don't want and what they don't need, then they're certainly not going to be able to tell us what they do need. So I think it requires, again, a bit of patience and trust and some time to establish that relationship.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, I've as I said, I've got 4 kids, and I've had ups and downs with my relationship with them, and I've tried to be patient with them and tried lots and lots of different methods. So if you were sort of giving advice to me, because I was hitting this brick wall continuously, what advice would you give me as a parent of different methods to try to get my child to open up at these times?
I think it's always an interesting one about opening up as well, because again, I sometimes think, is it that the child needs to open up, or is it that we need them to open up so we feel better about how they're feeling? Maybe.
That's such a good point. Definitely.
So I guess how I'd maybe explain that, I think, like my experiences of being in a relationship, let's say, if you have an argument or there's some conflict, or you know something goes wrong, one person wants to talk and one person doesn't. If one person's kind of happy to agree to disagree, yeah, all right, we both said our piece, no problem. And the other person is, no, we need to talk about this, we need to air it. My experience is the person that wants to talk usually wins that argument. And that might be helpful to them, but how helpful is it to the person that, again, sort of doesn't want to talk? So, you know, I think that there's that. I think it's an assumption that talking about things helps. Problem shared, problem halved, or a problem shared is a problem doubled, depending on who you tell and how they react and respond. So again, I'd maybe kind of think about what we want to get out of this conversation from the outset, and and I think maybe being clear that if somebody does talk or if somebody does open up, it's not so that we can sort of give them advice, tell them what to do and fix them. It might just be about, if you want to talk and vent and offload, then I will just sit here, listen, and hopefully you'll feel better after that. Would be maybe.
You've just given me such good advice on so many fronts there. Give me some marriage counselling, because I'm the one who wants to talk and my husband doesn't. Really good advice for my kids as well, because so often I'm finding, you know, with my teenagers especially, that I want to talk because that's the way I want to resolve things, but they don't want to talk all the time. So, you know, there are times I've learned to just be quiet and accept the fact that they've got their earphones in and they're happy.
Yeah, there will be a good reason for that, I'd imagine. And, you know, and I don't suppose it is ever a kind of a personal attack on you either or anybody else. I think when people want to help, they're often well-meaning, and I think they go with the best intentions, but at the risk of sounding kind of quite cold, and I'm not, that's kind of not always enough. It's that age-old kind of saying, isn't it? You know, treat people the way you'd like to be treated. I kind of think you should treat people the way they like to be treated.
They want to be treated, definitely.
Which is, again, maybe slightly different, because we don't always, what works for us might not necessarily work for somebody else, and I think we never understand what works for somebody else by listening.
Definitely. And that's something I've had to learn over the years, actually, because we were all brought up, treat people the way you expect to be treated, but it has changed, and it is the way they want to be treated. So you've given us some great advice: listening, getting the conversation going when we can, and treat them the way they want to be treated. They're human beings. We need to respect them. So what what other concerns in this huge pandemic could we have with regards to our children going back to school? Is there anything else that you would like to sort of bring to the front that we might be concerned about?
I think there's bound to be kind of huge anxiety for
Yeah,
children and young people. I mean, if you look at kind of the experiences of children and young people, we've known for kind of decades that periods of transition for children and young people are where, you know, that they're most at risk in terms of their mental health deteriorating. And this is a big period of transition, you know. Exam periods are big periods of stress for children and young people. Well, that's been turned upside down. We've got a government that haven't been particularly clear on, and that's putting it kindly, on what this will look like for children and young people. You know, they've had it drummed into them since they started secondary school about the importance of their GCSEs and their exams for their future career. And now they don't know what grades they get in. They don't know the impact on further education or higher education. Their whole experience of higher education, if they choose to go, has changed significantly. You know, so I think it's a really tough time for all of us, but for children and young people, you know, even more so. So yeah, I mean, it's there's bound to be an anxiety, and we all cope with anxiety differently, from acting
and
out.
as a parent or a carer of young people, just being aware of this so that we can have more empathy with our children, realizing they've got anxieties like we do. You know, there's anxiety for everybody around what's going on. So it's what's going on in their lives as well. I mean, even my youngest was so anxious the other day because he's missed out on his school camp. Now, to a parent, that means nothing, but to a year 6 kid, that's a lot. That's a big
Yeah,
thing. It's something he's been looking forward to for years. So
that's it. And it can feel trivial to us, but to them, it's kind of real distress.
it is. It is definitely. So it's getting to their level and really understanding that we've all got different worries and concerns around this time.
Yeah, and I think going back to the idea of not, what if they don't want to talk? I think we can. There's things we can do. I think as not just parents, carers, professionals, but just in your kind of everyday life. I think there's things that we can do and actions that we can take that make people feel like they matter and that they're cared about.
Mm,
You know, and I think if somebody is struggling and clearly doesn't want to talk, and is enjoying their own space, you know, I think a cup of tea,
give them their space.
and asked for it goes a long way. Or, you
Mm,
know,
those little things.
there's lots of things I think we can do that make people feel like they matter, or just reinforce the fact that they do. And keeping people in mind, I think, is really important.
Definitely. And I'm even thinking about, you know, I've been playing lots of board games with my younger two, but my older one, who I didn't even think was interested in board games, is always slipping in
Yeah,
and joining in because he wants to be a part of it, which is
definitely.
understandable. So it's keeping them involved, noticing them,
Yeah,
and showing those little acts of kindness as well.
yeah, I think so.
You've been fantastic, Ben. Thank you for all those insights. And it's realizing these young people are human beings. They've got worries.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
They are. And I
Thank
think sometimes a little bit more insightful than we give them credit for.
Definitely. So we've all got to come back to you if we've got any questions. So
Mhm.
thank you very much for your time.
Cheers,
Next
Claire,
week,
thank you.
thank you. Next week we've got Benny's back, and Benny's going to give us some facts. We're going to have a little bit of a chat on facts about the youth and teenagers and their mental health. We want to get these conversations going. We want to get people talking about their emotions so that we've all got emotional fitness through these really difficult times. So thank you very much, and
Cheers,
see
Claire.
you next time. Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.